So this is Doc Stars. I'm just responding to the recent video that's come out about Fantastic Daily being a fiction. Um, I'm the YouTuber that the docs are contacted, and that happens late the evening of the live stream. Uh, I've been making observations over the last couple of months that had made me suspicious of a number of things. But like everyone, I was torn between, if somebody presents that they're in trouble, especially in this kind of scenario, I think a reasonable person does what they can to try and want to assist. And so that's what I did. And the person that contacted me had found a single piece of evidence that was very compelling and suspicious. And so she and I spent a number of hours going through, searching the web to see what else we might find. And I was livid. And the thing that made me angry the most at the time was that I know what it's like for someone to go through a really dark time and to be confronted with something that's really scary, of a paranormal nature. And, people like that don't have a lot of people to turn to. It's not something that you can just talk about with your friends and neighbors often, casually. And it's a real challenge, even just going to people like pastors and ministers that, will not only listen, but are actually equipped to deal with that, because a lot of them aren't. And I contacted Blind Brick and Mad Cat. It must have been somewhere around 20 hours before Fantastic Daily or Andrew's video had been posted, and I told them straight up. I told them about the evidence. I told them where to go, how to find it, and I also had posted some information on Fantastic Daily's YouTube site. One of the pieces of information that this lady had provided had an address associated with it. There was no reason to think that this address was associated with this fellow's home. And I don't think she knew it when she found it. And we had intended to share this with the Fantastic Daily's audience, as well as the Mad Cat and Blind Brick. Andrew, Fantastic Daily, contacted me the very next day. And for the first time in months, he urgently wanted to talk, and he wanted to actually make an appearance this time and discuss things on Skype. So we talked for about 3 hours, and he told me everything. And he had some points, that you try to see different sides of a story, right? I told him exactly what I thought and where I was coming from. I said, it's one thing to make fiction to entertain people. He told me that his goal was to inspire and, to create a meaningful experience for people through story. And I understand that. I understand the importance of that in our reality. He told me that there's a very large group of people that we talked about, like I said, for 3 hours. There was just a lot of stuff going back and forth. That there had been a camera crew at the house, and that home was not on an acreage. It was in a populated area, and he said that one of his concerns was one of safety, because if there was crazy people on his audience that wanted to dox someone, and then what he referred to as I won't go into it, but we don't have that happening in Canada. Not to my knowledge. I don't think I've even really been exposed to that term before. You know, and the lady that had located this information, I didn't get the impression at all that she meant, really did not get the impression that she had any intention of causing him the kind of grief that appears to be associated with that. She just, my impression was she was pissed off, mainly because of, you know, the dead baby claim being inappropriate, which it is, and that she wanted the truth to come out. So what happened on my end was, you know, when I first started talking to Andrew, he was trying to tell me what his side of the situation was. And his side was that he was involved with some kind of an ARG group, which I'm not terribly familiar with. This is some kind of, I think it's a role-playing game type thing. And that he told me that there was a huge community, something about 20,000 people being associated with this. As I'm going through the shame, shame, shame video, there's a lot of comments in there coming from people saying that they enjoyed the story. And then I told Andrew yesterday that if it ever came out, all the people that believed in him would be really disappointed, you know, especially if you've had a scary paranormal experience. It'd be kind of like a slap in the face, you know? But he didn't seem to get that. He didn't seem to understand that, didn't seem to want to understand that. You know, he had his own perspective, and that seemed to be the perspective that was locked in place. You know, part of his argument was compelling. You know, certainly from the context of his perception and perhaps his fellow gamers online, there may be validity to his arguments within that context. You know, so if the only people that were watching the show were gamers of that mindset, probably people wouldn't be upset. But what I was trying to express to him is that you probably have people watching this series. Some people may have lost kids. Some people have been involved in scary paranormal activity, and this isn't going to work with them. You know, you're working with a mixed audience, and as I go through the comments now, everything I told Andrew that I was concerned about. I mean, it's the majority of the cases. There are very few comments that are okay with what's happened. Most of the comments that I'm seeing so far are in line with what I was upset about. So there's a lot more to this. I feel let down because I had hoped that a friendship with a colleague was developing, and I had a care and concern for the character of the person. Over the course of 3 hours, you know, I try to be a fairly open-minded person. So I can honestly say that there were some areas of concern that he had that I had empathy and sympathy for. And I still do. Insofar as, you know, he expressed to me that his main intention was to do something that would help people. So it's a good thing to want to help people. It's a good thing, you know, if you're telling stories or you're a storyteller and that's inspiring people, then that's great. But you know, you have to be careful because another word for storytelling can be lying. And there's a fine line between the two. You know, it's one thing to tell a person a story and maybe they feel better, and it's another thing to just outright deceive. And I told him in the conversation that we had on Skype, I said, you know, I think this is wrong. I think it's unethical. I don't condone it. He expressed a concern about physical safety to his wife and child. And I had made a post to Blind Brick and to Mad Cat and to his site, and only on the basis of what he was telling me, because I didn't understand how this works. Obviously I'm pissed off, but I don't want any harm to come to innocence, or potential harm to come to innocence, which would be his child and potentially his wife. So I said to him, well, I'll take down what I know. I'll remove those posts. But he told me at the time of our conversation um, that Blind Brick was in on it and had been for a while, and that he had fabricated the video footage of the captured black-eyed child. And the posts that I put up on Blind Brick and Mad Cat's video comment section, they'd been there for a while. Like, I mean, before I took my comments down, and not knowing that there was any information about his home address on there, I would never have included his home address, obviously, even though I hadn't known about, what doxing is. But I never got a response from Blind Brick or Mad Cat. And my guess is Mad Cat must have seen it. When Andrew called me, he was concerned about damage control. I didn't circulate that information widely. I only made it available to 3 different places. It was Mad Cat, Blind Brick, and his own video channel. But he told me that nobody on his channel had seen that post, that he had blocked that post. It sounds like Blind Brick must have blocked it there, because there was never any indication that anybody had seen it. And I never got any kind of indication or comments or anything back from Mad Cat. And Andrew thought that maybe the reason for that was maybe Mad Cat had shadow banned me. I don't know what that means, and why he would do that, I don't know. But I do know that Mad Cat's video FD is okay came out many hours after I had made the effort to notify him, that this was a fraud. So I have no idea whether Mad Cat was in on this or not. I don't condone what happened. It was a member of his own audience that contacted me, and she was concerned about my reputation. Like, when I talked to Andrew, he had told me that they had been planning to film this for some time forward, and that at some point it was going to come out, that it was fiction. And so one of the concerns I said to him, I says, well, if people think that you're a fraud, then that means anyone that you're associated with is going to think the same thing. And I don't want to be associated with that. Like, I take what I do seriously. I take the concerns of people that I deal with seriously. So I'm, pretty upset about that as well. Because I was never informed of this. And one thing that I was wrestling with, and I told him this in the conversation that we had, is that over the last couple of months, when I was mapping and charting things out with him, in the tools that I use, I kept noticing really weird aberrations. And one of which was, in the forecasting tools that I use, each time there was an incident, it's almost as if he had been paying attention, because the bad things kept happening. It seemed like he wasn't doing anything with it. But instead what he was doing is he was actually planning, in the series, that the bad things were happening on the dates I was forecasting. So I'm forecasting when it's happening, and it seems like he's writing it into the script. I had told him in advance that August 16th was a bad day, over a week or two ago. And it's funny because August 16th is when all this shit went down. And I told him that yesterday, and he kind of laughed. But one thing that kept popping up was when I was using my forecasting tools, what I would notice is that before I knew anything, during the time that he had had a scary, stressful, bad event, when I was looking with the forecasting tool, what kept showing up was that there was an indicator representing Fantastic Daily, and it was showing that he was just having a great time. He was relaxing, chatting, making jokes, having dinner, being comfortable. And I couldn't figure out, well, how is it that he's going through all this stress that he's reporting on his video series, but my forecasting tool seems to be indicating that in a very short period, like within an hour or two afterwards, he's just feeling tickety boot. And then the last thing that really ticked me off, or that really set up a red flag, was that, you know, actors and actresses can be master manipulators at pretend. You know, they can make someone really think that they're experiencing real emotions. But one thing that's extremely difficult for most actors and actresses to fake are something called micro facial expressions, because they happen on almost an unconscious and subconscious level. And microfacial expressions tend to reveal what's actually going on inside the person's psyche, irregardless of what they may be trying to pretend with a dramatic facial mask. And in his live stream test, where he was taking questions and answers, around the 31-minute mark, he talks about me. And he was saying something along the lines of, you know, my information is, or he's saying, you know, Doc Star's information is dense, guys. He knows a lot about this stuff. When he was describing me, not for very long, but long enough, one of the micro facial expressions that I thought I saw, which alarmed me, and this is before the doxer, you know, and I don't even know if she is a doxer or not a doxer. I don't know. All I know is that she discovered the first initial piece, and then together we started to find other things. But at the 31-minute mark, when he was describing me and my work, the microfacial expression I thought I saw was one of smugness, like almost mockery, you know, almost an arrogance, or that there was some kind of hidden joke in reference to me and my work. Now, I don't know if that was necessarily what he was associating, with me and or my work or not, but what I did see was a microfacial expression that did not seem to fit what was being expressed. But everything else was masterful. I mean, the entire time he's addressing me, I mean, it's it was a decent dramatic performance because he seemed very concerned. There's a lot of other things we talked about. I thought Mad Cat and Blind Brick would get on top of things. There was no response from them. I thought people in his audience, would see the post, but it was blocked. I talked to Andrew, like I said, for hours. He expressed the concern about the safety of his wife and child, and he asked, what did I feel compelled to do to offer whatever protection and support for his wife and kid that I could. So I said to him, for the meantime, I don't condone what you've done here. I don't think it's right. This is a betrayal to people that are really going through paranormal experiences. This is a betrayal to people who have lost children, because you're lying to them. It doesn't. I said he kept using the explanation of, well, it's a new form of entertainment, and that I don't understand this. So myself personally, I don't understand his form of entertainment. And there may be some element of truth there, but there's also rationalization, because entertainment or telling a story, even if that story helps make a person feel better, shouldn't come at the cost of lying. And and it turns out I was right. And the things that I was trying to tell him in our conversation about people feeling betrayed, and I said pretty much the same thing, word for word, to him in the conversation that I'm reading in the comments. But I said, okay, I'll take the post that I made to Mad Cat and Blind Brick down. They were never read anyway, because I think that they were blocked down. I took the one down from his own channel, but that didn't matter because it was blocked right at the beginning. And I disabled any content that was available there I said to him, I still don't condone this. I told him that I'm out as of now. Don't want to be associated with this. I said, and I'd asked him too. I said, did you ever have any intention of using my frequencies at all? And I think I remember him, laughing lightly and saying no, because they had no real monsters to fight. And to to a degree, in his credit, he told me that they had made some effort to try to protect and isolate me from any kind of backlash, or not backlash, but just fallout, or being cast in a poor light. But I said to him, I said, well, that's not really true, because what I had offered to you, even though I had my own suspicions that there was something not right about this, trying to be as objective as possible. I said, I provided you with strategies, with information, with tools and resources. I spent many hours, like over the last few months, I may have, like realistically, I may have put like 40 hours of work. And I spent many nights worried about this person, like afraid for this person. I go for long nights, long walks at night, really being concerned about his well-being. And, you know, I have to make a living. I have clients that pay me for my services, you know, uh, so all the time that I spent on his behalf, that's lost billable time. And my hourly service fee is not cheap. I don't make a lot of money each month. I do reasonably okay. Most of my clients are repeat clients. I also have in some cases like a scalable fee, because in some cases some clients can't afford to pay much, and if they need help, then I do what I can to help them. I can't take on every single person that has a problem, because I have a limited amount of time. I said to him, that there was a person from his own community who really needed help. She was going through something scary. This is a completely different person. And I spent a lot of my time for free, just giving her a hand. Uh, you know, and then just analysis and everything. All the, so I mean, to me, this constitutes a financial loss of at least a few $1,000s, and also a lot of lost, a lot of grief. So I don't think this is fun. I don't think it's funny. The small number of comments that I see in his video that seem to be, people that are disappointed that the game show didn't turn out right. My guess is that this is coming from, because he said that there was something like 20,000 people that knew about this and were in on it, and that they were going to be angry at anyone that didn't let the show run its course. But, the rest of his audience is a mixed crowd. These represent normal people. I said to him, these people don't share the same frame of reality. And, the other thing is, I believe in God. And I have great appreciation for Christians. And I support prayer. Prayer is pretty important. And yesterday I was thinking, one thing I want to say too is that when I talked to Andrew, the impression I got was that there was a part of his personality that I think was genuine and good-hearted and noble in nature. I think that there is and was a part of him all along that in some way did mean well, and I think still does. And while I was frustrated at the loss of the friendship of the character that I thought was developing between us, I did see a potential there for someone, possibly as a friend, even in with Andrew potentially, where there, in my mind, when I look at someone's character and behavior, that there's some promise and some potential and some hope. But we were really at odds with some fundamentals. And I told him straight up, I said, I think that you're rationalizing something that's inappropriate. I feel that, you're basically forcing, your perception of how things are and can and should be on other people who do not share your same ideals. So it's like you're making decisions for other people through deception about how they should feel about something. A lot of people don't feel it's okay to lie for any reason that you lost a kid. Period. A lot of people, don't think and feel that it's okay to lie about having a paranormal experience that is traumatic for any reason. Period. It doesn't matter what the excuse or rationalization given is. I said to him, if you'd been straight up with people from the start and you told them that this was a fiction, he asked me if he would have come to me at the beginning and had asked me, would I provide some kind of, creative content input. My answer had been, if you'd been straight up with me at the beginning and told me what was really going on, I probably would have. I would have been fine to collaborate with you. But I said a requisite would be that people know it's a fiction. That they're not being set up. I don't think that you, as a creative artist, whoever you are, whether it's Andrew or anyone else, you do not have the license to hijack people of faith, whether they're Christians or otherwise, and get them to pray on your behalf to God for what you're telling them is something that's tragic, and not expect some kind of consequence. Because if God exists, I personally believe that he does, he isn't going to appreciate that you're occupying the time and energy of spiritual people praying for something that doesn't exist. Because that time spent in prayer belongs to God, and it's supposed to go towards people that need it. I mean, that would be essentially the same. I mean, that would be almost the same kind of idea as going to a charity and taking up a bunch of their resources for a movie set to make an inspiring movie. And then the people that are actually hungry and poor and going without are left without, so you can make your movie. It's the same thing. There isn't a difference between that. So the other day I had agreed, to be quiet in the short term because of the concern for safety of his wife and child, and that was just tearing me apart. Because it's like, well, what do I do? Do I try to keep speaking the truth, or do I stay silent if I tell the truth? Andrew's telling me that he's worried that somebody might harm his wife and child. If I don't tell the truth, if I repress it, then that means, I don't tell people of spiritual faith that they're praying for a fiction. I tried to contact Andrew by Skype earlier today, but I couldn't get a hold of him. And I said, what I was going to say was that I was wrestling with my own conscience, and what my intention was to say that you're going to have to, we are going to have to come up with some other alternative here, because I can't live with my conscience and not say anything about this. This is wrong. Excuse me. And I did my own praying today too, because I certainly don't want to be in a situation where, to protect a couple of, two people that are innocent in this, I have to hide the truth from a large number of people that are really affected by this. And so I guess this is an answer to prayer, because he came out on his own. I guess probably because he was forced to. It looks like it. This lady that was doing the doxing, or if it was doxing, I still don't understand all of this. It sounds like she may have put him in a position where he got outed. So it's out of my hands now. Anyway, I wanted people to know that, my intention throughout this was to offer real support. And for those people that were looking to Fantastic Daily as a beacon of hope, I said to him in our chat yesterday, I said, there are people out there that are hurting, and they believe that you're the average common person who's in, a bad situation that they can relate to. And by seeing you hopefully overcome this, you might give them hope. And when I saw the last live stream episode where the speakers failed, I didn't know at that time. But when I saw that, the very first thing that kicked into my head is like, that doesn't seem right. First of all, he again didn't follow my instructions. Instead showed up at the wrong time, which I warned him about in advance. So why is he at the house during one of the worst times of the day? He also didn't bring enough of those devices. He only had one. And when the Bluetooth kept failing, I thought, that doesn't make sense. You're not inside the house. Yeah. So anyway, for those people that are really going through something, that are disappointed in this, and if you're a paranormal investigator and you have to sometimes vet clients because you don't know whether they're being honest with you or not, I would encourage you, don't take this to heart. Don't let this get you down. Because if you're sincere and you're really going through something, I would say, there's no substitute for God. There's no substitute for faith. The frequencies I develop, they're only meant as a complementary tool. They're not meant as a substitution for God. They're just a support tool. But if you're going through something that's truly dark of a paranormal nature, don't give up hope. There's sometimes when you go through the darkest things, if it's really scary, it's really traumatic, you'd be surprised how quickly your life situation can turn around. You'd be surprised, good people show up often at just the right time. So don't you give up hope, and don't you despair. Just because things like this, happen, this does not reflect on your experience, and this does not reflect on your ability to get out of tough situations. And I think what Andrew did here was wrong, and I think that he doesn't realize it somehow, for some reason. I don't entirely understand why he doesn't get the error in this. My guess is it may be part of his own environmental conditioning or his own life experience. We talked for 3 hours, and I did get the impression that there's also a good person there. He's obviously talented. He has a lot of creative potential. I think if what he's doing is channeled correctly and appropriately, he could do a lot of good. So what I would also say in his defense is, if you're upset with him, I would express that you're upset. I would ask that you temper the anger. Let me put it to you this way. If you follow my work, and if you have any respect for what I do, I can tell you that maybe I'm wrong, because I was wrong. I didn't catch on quick enough or fast enough earlier. I mean, I knew something was up. I thought something was up, but I didn't pick up enough to really have my own sense of certainty that it was, entirely a scam until yesterday when this person contacted me. So, if he pulled the wool over all of our eyes, and mine as well, because we were trying to be good-natured and open-hearted, and he was coming to us with a sob story, is it possible that we could fall for it again? It is possible. And I told him that the other day. I said, because part of the conversation, we were being frank and open about, as far as I could tell, about a lot of things. And there was part of that dialogue I was enjoying. There was a side of him that I could see as, even now, through everything, still possibly being a friend. But I said to him then, I said, as I interact with you, I have to tell you that I really have, at this point in time, no idea how honest or sincere anything that you're telling me is. I just don't. Like, I have no frame of reference for that. Uh, so part of me is still hoping that the good part of Andrew that I saw is genuine and real. And in that conversation that we had, the feeling and the sense that I got experientially was that there is a good person in there, and that there is a sincere person, but just somebody that, in my subjective impression, uh, just has some erroneous notions about how things are and how they should be. Like, I think what was going on is that he was giving himself license to say and do certain things because of erroneous understandings that he has. He took liberties that he shouldn't have taken, and I think he actually doesn't understand, really actually doesn't understand why those liberties should not be taken. And he justifies taking those liberties because of one of the things that came up is, he expressed that he thinks that in many situations the ends justify the means. And we talked about examples of that. I'm not going to go into details, but personally, I don't think the ends justify the means. I think that you need to get to your objective through the proper means. I think when you take certain kinds of shortcuts, or if something's done that's not ethical to arrive at a result, it doesn't turn out well. It's like you can't plant a garden with weeds, the seeds of weeds, and expect flowers to grow. It doesn't work that way. But like I say, um, I expressed my upset. I said I didn't condone it. Um, and my thought is that this is wrong. He was expressing what he felt his ideals were. Some of those ideals I think were valid, not justifying what he did because it doesn't matter. But what I would suggest is, um, based on what I witnessed, based on what I experienced with Andrew, I think even though what he did in my eyes and in the eyes of many is wrong, and that shouldn't be encouraged. And my hope is he gets to a place where he grasps this, that you can't do certain things under the umbrella of creative freedom or license. Uh, that there is a good person in there, and there is a good person in there, um, that has substance and has promise. So for those of you that are angry with him, I would explicitly ask, please don't take harsh action towards him. Do not dox him or take. Again, I don't understand how all this stuff works, but don't take action that would cause him harm. I think he deserves a thorough scolding, and I think he needs to. The ideal thing in my mind is that sincere remorse would be expressed, and that he would offer a sincere apology. I think an apology is due from Andrew to people that have lost children, and I think an apology is due to Christians that have been praying for a fiction. I think that's due. And I think an apology is due to people that have had negative paranormal experiences who feel betrayed. I think that Andrew owes that apology to at least those three people, those groups of people. Um, and I don't know if he's going to come to that conclusion. My hope is that he does. But whether he does or not, uh, you know, my opinion is that there was a part of Andrew that I liked, and I could see being a friend with when I talked to him. I was very straight about the parts that I did not agree with and that I thought were unethical and wrong. And if behavior isn't changed, if attitude is not adjusted, I think that there's going to be just a repeating of patterns on his part that cause more grief than good. And I would like to think and believe that he does have the capacity and he does have the potential to make a difference in people's lives and to create inspiration and hope and a novel, worthwhile, rich, meaningful, engaging experience. You know, when we first started talking, I was angrily saying that, you're doing this for entertainment. You can't place more value on entertainment than you do on the truth and for consideration of other people. Because the big issue here is you're being grossly, like grotesquely inconsiderate to large numbers of people, not factoring in, their worldview or how they feel, to serve your personal need to get your ideal or paradigm out for an entertainment. And he'd come back and said, well, it's not just about entertainment. He says storytelling is meaningful. And then he described why. And, that argument can go back and forth. I'm a science guy. I've had lots of friends that are artists. Before I got into science, I was in art school myself, and I worked as an artist before I got into science. So I know both sides of the fence. And I know that it's important to have, creative